So I can get started?
Yes, yes, please. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Amazing. Amazing. Thanks for having me. My name is Matt Wright. I'm the developer community lead with ConsenSys. I previously was at JP Morgan working on Quorum, the private Ethereum client. And see, 2020, the protocol was acquired by ConsenSys. And so I joined, and I now help grow our developer community on the side. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. Today, we're just going to go through an intro to Enterprise Ethereum and ConsenSys Quorum. So if any of you are familiar with Enterprise blockchain, this is a really good kind of junction to see how you can connect to public mainnet as well. So if you haven't heard of ConsenSys, we're founded in 2015. We're the one of the co-founders of Ethereum. And essentially, we're a software company building Ethereum products. We focus on developers, enterprises, and end users, especially with projects like MetaMask, if you're familiar. For developers out there, we have Truffle, Diligence, Infura, Codify, and then of course Quorum. So quite a product suite that plays well in this enterprise Ethereum space. We do a lot of work with various companies worldwide. I'll show you some use cases a little bit later, but we have quite a lot of business verticals that we work with. But we're really trying to bring enterprises into the Ethereum ecosystem, and we've done quite a good job in the past 5 years. Great. So with the ConsenSys and our product suite, we have the full package. So with ConsenSys Quorum that you can see down here in the bottom left, we have
sorry to interrupt. I just want to say thank you so much, Matt, for attending the session, and apologize I couldn't be with you because switching the accounts that host the events takes some time. So we want to waste the time. I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you. And again, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. It's an honor to have you.
Iman, thank you. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I didn't see you join there. Sorry for skipping ahead. Thank you for inviting me. Great. Yeah. So we have, within ConsenSys Quorum down here, we have a lot of other applications, middleware, open source projects that play well with Quorum. So anything that's EVM compatible or works with Ethereum works with Quorum. Great. So I'm sure a few of you know what Ethereum is. I just want to touch on why Ethereum. Ethereum, we have the largest developer ecosystem of any blockchain protocol globally. We've had enterprise adoption, the largest enterprise adoption with various enterprise projects. And we have just a lot of development happening behind this framework. So Ethereum is not necessarily just a cryptocurrency. It is actually a software development framework that helps the development of decentralized applications. And so we're able to see this in an enterprise setting and in a public Ethereum or public blockchain setting. This kind of goes into a brief differentiation of the public Ethereum blockchain versus the permissioned private networks that we see. And ConsenSys Quorum and Enterprise Ethereum, at this point in time, we see as more of a private permissioned environment. Over time, the goal is to have more compatibility with Ethereum mainnet, so that, similar to how the internet was, at first more of an intranet, and then blossomed into more of a public internet. That's how we see Enterprise Ethereum evolving over time. But with private Ethereum and permission Ethereum, you get, you have different perks in terms of privacy, speed, throughput, that we'll go into in a little bit later. But there's two different implementations of these Ethereum networks you can see. As I mentioned, Ethereum is an open source generalized blockchain for smart contract development for decentralized applications. And this works really well for enterprises because there's auditability, there's transparency, there's composability of these applications. We've seen a lot of enterprise needs in the ecosystem. So an Ethereum client is essentially, peer-to-peer networking layer that is maintained, through standard blockchain, minted blocks on the network, and then we have consensus engines that maintain the state of the data between the nodes, and so they're able to come to consensus and have a true decentralized network. And even though we have these private permission networks, they still maintain this consensus through various algorithms. As mentioned, there's an Ethereum virtual machine, so very similar to a Java virtual machine. For anyone that's an engineer out there, it's just an execution environment for processing these decentralized smart contract applications and transactions. There's decentralized storage that is able to pull from this ledger data that we're seeing. And then we also have various APIs and JSON RPCs that plug into the network and play with this. So it's a very composable software development framework that you can build on top of. Now, this is great for public Ethereum, but for enterprises, they had a lot of needs that weren't met. And as I mentioned, one being privacy, next being permissioning. So knowing who on the network is allowed to view certain forms of data, and then as well performance. So in public Ethereum, I'm sure if you have been running transactions or sending money in different places, the transaction speeds are very low, and the throughput's low, and also there's a lot of fees. So the performance does not work for enterprises at this moment, but we're working towards something that does work for enterprises. And finality. So for enterprises and large institutions, they want to know when they make a transaction that there's no question that the transaction will go through or be final. And this is just something that's not met with public blockchain and public Ethereum at the moment. So as I mentioned, with Enterprise Ethereum, we've addressed permissioning. So you have node level permissioning, where you decide who can join your network, your node. And then you have account level permissioning, where you can restrict transactions to a subset of authorized accounts. So some like a group on WhatsApp, you can have like your own private group of people sending each other transactions. For banks, this is really useful when you have only a group of known participants on your network. And then even within that group of known participants, you can have a private group sending transactions. And we're seeing a lot of interesting use cases for that. We also address privacy. So we're enabling transactions to contain private information and to only be viewable to a subset of participants on the network. And then we have, of course, consensus algorithms that work for Enterprise Ethereum. So for public Ethereum, public blockchain, most popularly, we use proof of work algorithms. So you do all this mining with private permissions, Enterprise blockchain or Enterprise Ethereum. You don't need mining since you're in a group of known participants. You don't need to verify. You don't need to have mining algorithms to verify these participants on the network. They're known to you, you invited them, but you do need to have consensus. So it is a truly decentralized group of participants. And so we have proof of authority algorithm, we have Byzantine fault tolerance, and we have Raft. So you can have a pluggable way to address consensus. And there's various plugins, so you can have different any applications, dApps, tools, extensions that work with Ethereum can be added on top of your network and be used as such. It's a very composable and pluggable network. Great. Yeah. So the benefits. And when you're building on private permission Ethereum, so with ConsenSys Quorum, you get to build on top of the development of public Ethereum. So since public Ethereum is, a very biased, but one of the most robust open source projects we've ever seen in history, we get to benefit from the development of that. And we have the world's largest developer community, as mentioned. Also, to deploy Enterprise Ethereum with ConsenSys Quorum, it's very low cost, it's fast to deploy, we have a lot of quick start options. You don't have to customize much. It comes right out of the box. You can spin up your own network depending on your use case. We have the most advanced implementation of tokenized assets. Ethereum is trending in this field. So if you see a lot of work on CBDCs and like central bank digital currencies, and tokenized cash, interbank payments, supply chain finance, like a lot of these use cases are tokenizing assets on Ethereum because you have the power of smart contracts where you can build out full decentralized applications. And then, so we have the largest ecosystem and community. So the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance has hundreds of enterprise participants. I, again, mentioned previously was at JP Morgan, who is one of the founding members of the EEA as well, Microsoft, ConsenSys, Accenture, ING, Cisco, Intel, a lot of big players in space. So ConsenSys Quorum, what is that? ConsenSys Quorum is essentially Enterprise Ethereum. It is comprised of a few different Ethereum clients. We have Go Quorum, which was previously JP Morgan's Quorum, and we have Hyperledger Besu. Go Quorum, the biggest difference is it's built on Golang, so it's Go Ethereum, and then Hyperledger Besu is built in Java. And then the other biggest differentiator is that Go Quorum's more built for private permission networks, and Hyperledger Besu can do private permission networks and can also do public mainnet. And so we do a lot of work on helping bring enterprises to mainnet Ethereum, public Ethereum. Under the hood of ConsenSys Quorum, we have essentially a few components. So we have the client level, which I just mentioned. We have a private transaction manager. And so right now, Orion actually is being deprecated. We're just going to have one private transaction manager, Tessera, and that essentially runs the transactions from the client. And so there's this segregation of duties on the blockchain and off-chain. We also have key management solutions for enterprises. We have Ethereum client plugins, so you can essentially use various tools and extensions that add further features for your network. And then, as mentioned, like tooling and libraries, anything that works with Ethereum, we have Quorum Kubernetes, we have Besu Kubernetes, Quorum.js. If you're familiar with Ethereum development, there's a lot of interesting libraries out there that you can use, and they all play with Ethereum. So it's quite a robust ecosystem. You don't have to build a lot of things on your own. There's a lot of open source projects. And so this is great for flexible use cases. I'll show you a few in a second, but we're seeing some in large institutionals, from supply chain to finance. We're seeing all kinds of use cases. This is useful in any circumstance where you have a group of known participants that need to send private transactions in an enterprise environment. We have both private and public networks, as I mentioned, so you can do a private blockchain, and then you can also start talking to mainnet Ethereum over time. There's strong privacy and permissioning. So we have various like zero knowledge proofs that help with further encryption of your data. But on the surface level, the privacy and permissions very strong for enterprises and works better than public Ethereum for their use cases. We have pluggable consensus mechanisms, immediate finality, so you know that your transactions are final and there will be no fork in the network. And this is production ready. So we're seeing a lot of production use cases that are using ConsenSys Quorum. Pretty much already mentioned this stuff. So what can I build with ConsenSys Quorum? Pretty much private blockchains are useful when you have an organization that consists of geographically distributed members, spotty trust between members, no reason for central control. And when we see those conditions met, it's usually in asset or supply chain systems. We also see this with multi-party, multi-organizational decision-making, where there's like a multi-signature contract involved. And this benefits, auditability, operational transparency, data integrity use cases. I guess, if you have like a bank who is talking to another bank, they have their own sets of data, and so they want to be in control of who sees that data as they're exchanging it. And they both agree that there's a subset of data that they can both have access to, but there is also some private data they don't want to make that party access. So those are kind of the use cases we see. It's also the same with supply chain. If you're sending, fruit through different suppliers and there's different financiers involved, you might want them to know, where this item came from, but you might not want them to know how much money you have in your bank accounts. And so there's just this subset of data that you want people to access to make the value chain or the supply chain more transparent, more auditable, more efficient. But then there's other parts of the data where you just want to keep that private, and that's where we see the use cases for ConsenSys Quorum. In some of the industries that we see using this, again, financial services and payments, so network payments, tokenized cash, central banking, sanctions info clearing. We see a lot of work in capital markets, so from digital gold to trade finance. We have proxy voting for board seats, OTC, a lot of debt issuance use cases. And then if we go to this other vertical, we have supply chain. So we've seen a lot of projects around authenticity of goods, and cold chain logistics, supply chain tracking. There is a lot of work with identity, with voting, royalty and hospitality. So rewards points, being able to transfer airline rewards from one partnership to another group, or being able to even transfer your airline points into Starbucks rewards, things like this, where you have these different groups that need to talk to one another and want to share data, but they only want to share it at a certain level. We've also seen work in healthcare with auto insurance claims as well. In the healthcare industry, we have a couple of use cases that work around healthcare data for the provider. And so being able to share that a patient has healthcare insurance, but between the insurance providers, I think is super important. And yeah, so these are some of the marquees or the large organizations that are using ConsenSys Quorum today. They're using Hyperledger Besu and Go Quorum. They're both interoperable to this day. So if any organization wants to try out either, they're welcome to. We're seeing a lot more energy towards Hyperledger Besu as we begin working more towards mainnet Ethereum. Great, and then this is kind of the cool part. These are some of the projects that are building on Quorum today. On the JP Morgan side, we have the Link project, which is a cross-bank blockchain for data exchange between 400 plus banks. Some of the world's largest banks are essentially creating a group, a private network where they can exchange data and exchange transactions. And then on top of that, they'll have this instant settlement of transactions with JPM coin that is pegged to their JP Morgan reserves 1-to-1. We also have wholesale payments in Singapore with the Singapore digital dollar with Project Ubin. We also have the Brazil Central Bank. They're using ConsenSys Quorum for data exchange between different agencies within the government. So from the Securities Commission to the Pension Authority, being able to share the data of their employees and or citizens, I think is super important. VACT, I think, is a very interesting use case for for this region, but it's essentially oil and gas supply chain finance. So being able to solve this trapped data and risk of fraud losses and lower operating costs with supply chain finance. When you're shipping oil, they have a lot of paper trail, a lot of inefficiency with the financing and with the supply chain itself. So being able to have more transparency and being able to make more data accessible to all of the participants involved in that value chain, super important. And that's brought to you by Shell, BP, ABN, Amaro, and ING, and Societe Generale. So it's a lot of big names working together, trying to solve an industry problem. And that's kind of what we're seeing a lot of these use cases, when it's not one company trying to solve a problem for their users, but is a group, a consortium of organizations coming together to solve an industry problem. And it's quite interesting. We also have LVMH, so they're doing authenticity of luxury goods, which is incredibly important. And then we have, I think a super important one would be interesting to you folks would be Emar, so owner of Burj Khalifa, launched a platform for rewarding customers and tokens for the loyalty and business referrals within all of the businesses under that umbrella. And so it's somewhat of a more traceable and auditable ledger of data for that group. We also have like State Farm and USAA. They're doing auto insurance claims on ConsenSys Quorum, where when you get in a car accident and you send your claim to your insurer, they need to talk to their corresponding insurer. That's the person, the other party that you may have gotten an accident with. And that process alone requires paper checks that are just floating through the air and not producing any interest on the capital. And so with this use case, they've been able to clear payments and settle payments or settlements in seconds versus months. And so this saves them millions of dollars on a monthly basis, just because they're making the process more efficient, more accessible, and more auditable. And so there's a big trend with all these use cases. And that's, again, that they're just trying to solve an industry problem and open up some of the data that they're sharing on these ledgers. And it's a different way to view blockchain. This is how we see Enterprise right now. And we're looking to see more of these use cases enter the public mainnet roadmap. I won't go into too much of the detail. One thing that's cool from ConsenSys side, we have an enterprise stack. So if you are looking to deploy ConsenSys Quorum, it is an open source project. You can go find it on GitHub. You can start running your own network. If you wanted to get in touch with our team, we have a good suite of applications that work on the enterprise level. It's called Codify. And so if you're wanting to have any enterprise management, Codify orchestrates a good place to start. We have a whole suite of applications that serve different use cases. We also have paid support too. So if you're worried about your engineers not having support from an open source project, we have support. We have engineers on staff that can help you get your use case started. And then my last point is just, if there's any engineers out there, I'm sure there are. This is the quickest way to get started with ConsenSys Quorum. You can just go to your terminal and essentially deploy Quorum Dev Quick Start, and that essentially will spin up. You can either choose between Quorum or Besu, and then it'll spin you up some nodes, and you can essentially run transactions from your own machine and see how this network works in a test environment. And then if you want to go to production, feel free to reach out to me. We have some pro tips for folks, but this is the easiest way just to test out how a private permissioned enterprise Ethereum network works. And so that's essentially it. And yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, here's my email. You could also find us on Discord. Iman, I don't know if we can send out information on our Discord, but it's just chat.consensys.net. That's the link. And yeah, really appreciate everyone coming to the session, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciated, really very informative information. We appreciate everyone. If there is any questions, maybe you can just have it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your help and support.
Bye.